The ongoing war in Ukraine has become a focal point of the 2024 US presidential election. With former President Donald Trump hinting at a potential run, his past stance on Russia and Ukraine has drawn intense scrutiny. Trump's history of unconventional diplomacy, including his warm relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin, raises questions about how a potential second Trump presidency might impact the war's trajectory. The outcome of the election could significantly influence US foreign policy and have far-reaching consequences for the region and the world. Donald Trump's relationship with Russia has been marked by a series of unconventional interactions and statements. During his presidency, Trump repeatedly praised Putin, even questioning US intelligence assessments regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election. His decision to withhold military aid to Ukraine, while simultaneously urging Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate his political rival Joe Biden, raised eyebrows and sparked impeachment proceedings. These actions, coupled with Trump's reluctance to publicly criticize Russia, fueled speculation about his motives and his stance on Russia's action in Ukraine. Trump's approach to Russia stood in stark contrast to that of previous US administrations. While acknowledging the need to confront Russia's aggressive behavior, Trump also expressed a desire for improved relations with Putin. He often framed the relationship in transactional terms, seeking areas of cooperation while downplaying concerns about human rights and democratic values. This approach, while welcomed by some who saw it as a pragmatic way to manage a complex relationship, alarmed others who viewed it as naive and potentially dangerous. The 2017 Helsinki summit, where Trump appeared to side with Putin over US intelligence agencies regarding Russian election interference, became a defining moment in his relationship with Russia. The summit sparked widespread condemnation, with critics accusing Trump of undermining US interests and emboldening Putin. Trump's subsequent attempts to clarify his remarks did little to quell the controversy, leaving a lasting stain on his presidency and raising concerns about his judgment on matters of national security. Donald Trump's foreign policy vision, often described as America First, represents a significant departure from the traditional bipartisan consensus on US global leadership. Trump's approach emphasizes national sovereignty, economic nationalism, and a skeptical view of international institutions. He has criticized US involvement in multilateral agreements, questioned the value of alliances like NATO, and advocated for a more transactional approach to foreign policy. Trump's views on Russia and Ukraine are intricately linked to his broader foreign policy worldview. He's expressed admiration for strongmen like Putin and questioned the wisdom of US support for Ukraine, a country he views as corrupt and strategically unimportant. Trump's skepticism towards NATO and his desire to reduce US military commitments abroad have also raised concerns among allies in Eastern Europe, who fear that a second Trump presidency could embolden Russia and undermine regional security. Trump's foreign policy vision has sparked intense debate within the US and among its allies. Supporters argue that his approach is long overdue, challenging a status quo they view as detrimental to American interests. They contend that Trump's focus on national sovereignty and economic nationalism puts America first after years of globalization and foreign entanglements. Critics, however, argue that Trump's policies are short-sighted and counterproductive, undermining US leadership and weakening the rules-based international order. Section 3. The potential impact on the battlefield aid, sanctions, and negotiations. A potential second Trump presidency could have significant implications for the ongoing war in Ukraine, particularly regarding military aid, sanctions, and the prospects for a negotiated settlement. During his 2024 campaign, Trump has sent mixed signals about his intentions, at times suggesting he could end the war quickly, and at other times expressing admiration for Putin's leadership. This ambiguity has fueled uncertainty about how he might approach the conflict if elected. Trump's past actions and statements suggest a potential shift in US policy towards Ukraine. As president, Trump delayed military aid to Ukraine and expressed skepticism about the country's strategic importance. He also criticized NATO allies for not contributing enough to Ukraine's defense, raising concerns that he might pressure them to reduce their support. Such a move could significantly weaken Ukraine's ability to resist Russian aggression. Trump's approach to sanctions against Russia has also been inconsistent. While initially imposing sanctions in response to Russia's annexation of Crimea and interference in the 2016 election, Trump often expressed reluctance to maintain or strengthen these measures. He argued that sanctions were ineffective and harmful to US economic interests, suggesting a willingness to lift them as part of a broader deal with Putin. This approach contrasts sharply with the Biden administration's policy of maintaining and even expanding sanctions until Russia withdraws from Ukraine. Section 4. A ripple effect: NATO, Europe, and the global order. The potential impact of a second Trump presidency extends far beyond the immediate consequences for Ukraine. Trump's unconventional foreign policy approach, particularly his skepticism towards NATO and his willingness to engage with authoritarian leaders, could have profound implications for the transatlantic alliance, European security, and the broader global order. Trump's past criticisms of NATO, which he has described as obsolete and a financial drain on the US, have raised alarm bells among European allies. His suggestion that the US might not defend NATO members who fail to meet their defense spending commitments has fueled fears about the alliance's future and the credibility of US security guarantees. Beyond NATO, Trump's approach to Russia and Ukraine could embolden other authoritarian leaders, particularly in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. His willingness to overlook human rights abuses and his transactional view of foreign policy could signal to these leaders that they can act with impunity. This could lead to a more unstable and dangerous world, with the potential for increased conflict and a weakening of the rules-based international order. Section 5. Voices of dissent and support a divided America. The prospect of a second Trump presidency has deepened the already existing divisions within American society, particularly regarding foreign policy. Trump's unconventional approach to Russia and Ukraine has elicited both strong support and fierce criticism, reflecting the broader polarization of American politics. Trump's supporters often view his approach as a refreshing change from the perceived failures of previous administrations. They argue that his willingness to challenge the status quo, prioritize American interests, and engage with adversaries like Russia is necessary to address the challenges of a changing world. They contend that Trump's focus on America first is a long overdue corrective to decades of misguided foreign policy that has left the US weaker and less secure. Conversely, Trump's critics view his approach as reckless, incoherent, and detrimental to US interests. They argue that his admiration for authoritarian leaders, his disdain for international institutions, and his transactional view of foreign policy undermine American leadership and weaken the rules-based international order. They fear that a second Trump presidency would further erode democratic norms, embolden adversaries, and damage America's standing in the